The divine falls in love, and the three realms are unsettled. The gold content continues to rise. My imperial advisor sealed the demon with his soul, trading it for the peace of the three realms. But war god Mo, she embraced the demon lord's daughter, smashed the Hall of Heroes, and cursed me for killing his father-in-law. He threatened with mountainous pressure. Mortal, kneel and beg for forgiveness. I silently saw off the war god, then turned and decreed, from this day forward, De Leon will not worship gods, but only revere heroes. That very night, when the temples were smashed, the god's divine power rapidly declined. Heaven was thrown into chaos. The mortal world has cut off all incense. What will we do when the source of divine power dries up? Mo, she discovered with horror that the mortal world really no longer needed them. Raise the coffin. A muffled sound broke through the heavy sky. A team of soldiers in black armor solemnly lifted a heavy coffin and walked forward. I walked at the head of the procession, my nose involuntarily tingling. Inside the coffin was De Liang's imperial advisor, also my teacher, Qiu Shan. And I am the emperor of De Liang, Xiao Yan. A few months ago, the demon race, originally trapped outside the human-demon barrier, suddenly broke the seal for unknown reasons and invaded the mortal realm on a large scale. The mortal realm has been organizing manpower to resist, but still cannot contend with them. Normally, in this situation, the heavenly war god Mo, she should come and help. But the demon disaster has been going on for so long, and there is still no news of the war god. There wasn't even any news from heaven. The whole mortal world was in a state of panic. Just when I was at a loss, Qiu Shan, covered in wounds, found me. He told me the method to restart the barrier and how to defeat the demon lord. Using the life of the strongest person in the mortal realm and the lives of hundreds of mortal cultivators to activate a forbidden technique. In the end, the demon lord was beheaded and the demon realm army retreated back to the demon realm. The human realm restarted the human-demon barrier, and the human realm gained a brief period of peace. And today is the 7th day after my teacher's death, and I am burying him with the grandeur of an emperor. After walking for an unknown time, we arrived at a huge stone tablet, densely covered with writing. This was a stele I ordered to be erected called the Hall of Heroes to commemorate all those who died in this war. I raised my hand, signaling the procession to stop. Halt! The eunuch Wang Zhi's voice rang out, and the procession silently stopped. Let us mourn, I said lightly. Upon hearing my words, everyone in the procession closed their eyes and mourned for the departed souls. I also silently closed my eyes. Boom! As if touched by the scene, a bolt of lightning flashed across the sky, making a dull, thunderous sound. I'm going to kill you. Then an angry female voice entered my ears. Hearing this, I opened my eyes and saw a woman dressed in black flying towards me from the sky. Her body was surrounded by rolling black smoke, mixed with endless anger, attacking us. Demon race. I frowned slightly, looking at the woman attacking us. Why are there still demons that escape the net? I was a little puzzled, but not flustered. Looking at the demonic energy around her, her cultivation didn't seem very high. Daring to attack the Emperor of De Liang with this level of cultivation can only be described as extremely arrogant. As expected, before she could get close to me, the guard Qianlong rushed toward her with a punch. Qianlong's fist was about to land on the demon woman. But in the next second, an accident happened. Impudent. A majestic, angry voice came from the sky. Then, almost substantive pressure swept towards Qianlong. Qianlong was caught off guard by this sudden pressure and fell heavily to the ground. Seeing this, the others quickly wanted to help Qianlong, but they were all unable to move by the terrifying pressure. And I looked up in the direction of the voice. When I saw the person who came, a strange sense of absurdity surged in my heart. In a gloomy sky, a spotless white figure was suspended in midair. It was the heavenly war god Mo, she, who had been missing for several months and had plunged De Liang into despair. Seeing Mo, I naturally guessed what was going on. I smiled self-deprecatingly. He didn't come when the demon race was slaughtering the human realm. He didn't come when the demon woman attacked, but he appeared when we were about to kill the demon woman. But I still had to put on a show. Lord Emoshi. My voice was unusually calm. Each word seemed to be chiseled out from under a frozen riverbed. Try to maintain the dignity of the emperor. You descend to the mortal realm. What for? Emoshi did not answer me immediately. His figure moved slightly, and he appeared next to the black-clad woman surrounded by demonic energy. He gently protected her behind him. His posture was the tenderness of protecting a rare treasure. Almo, you're finally here. I thought you didn't care about me anymore. When Mo, put the black-clad woman in his arms, the woman began to act coquettishly. Her voice was as charming as it could be, as pitiful as it could be. Hearing this, Mo, gently stroked her head and comforted her softly. No, I won't care about you, even if the heavens and earth collapse. Then his icy gaze swept over Chunlong on the ground, as if crushing an annoying ant, and finally landed on me. In those eyes that were once regarded as a symbol of the protection of the mortal realm, there was only aloof indifference and a trace of anger caused by being disturbed. What for? Mo's voice was like the ice of the 9 heavens, with the unquestionable pressure of a god, causing the air to buzz. Xiaoyan, you, as the emperor of the Liang, actually condone your subordinates in attempting to kill this god's lover. Do you know your crime? Loa. I repeated these 2 words, my gaze falling on the demon woman who was nestled in his arms, looking at me with deep hatred and pride. The demonic energy she exuded was the same as those demons who slaughter my people and destroy my home. A sense of absurdity almost overwhelmed me. I almost laughed, but my voice became even colder. The Lord has not visited the mortal realm for several months, so it turns out he went to find a relative. I just don't know. What is the identity of this lover of the Lord? This pure demonic energy reminds me of an old friend, that demon lord majesty who was just sealed by my imperial advisor with his soul, and whose soul was scattered and annihilated. Hearing this, the demon woman's hatred intensified, and she shrieked, "It's him! Mo, it was he who killed my father. It was he who ordered that damned Qiu Shan to use evil magic to kill my father. I want him to pay with his life." Lingxi, Mo, she shouted softly, patted her hand soothingly, then turned to me, the coldness in his eyes almost freezing me. Xiaoyan, you heard that. You harmed the demon lord for your own selfish purposes, and even condone your subordinates to attack this god's Lingxi. The crime is unforgivable. Considering that you are still sensible and did not continue to attack, kneel down, kowtow to Lingxi, and beg for forgiveness. Otherwise, don't blame this god for flattening your imperial city today. Kneel down and beg for forgiveness? I gently chewed on these words, the anger surging in my chest, almost bursting through my throat. But I just slightly raised my chin, my gaze unyieldingly meeting his condescending gaze. Lord Mo, I have a few questions. I wonder if the Lord can answer them. Speak. Mo, frowned slightly, seemingly not expecting me to immediately kneel and beg for mercy, but to dare to ask questions instead. First, my voice clearly transmitted through the suppressed thunder. Several months ago, the demon army tore the barrier, slaughtering the mortal realm. Corpses littered the fields, and blood flowed like rivers. My letters requesting help flew to the heavens like snowflakes, but were like a stone sinking into the sea. May I ask the Lord, where were you at that time? Were you preoccupied with divine duties, or... My gaze swept over his hand, holding the demon woman's hand with meaningful hints, indulging in a gentle embrace, unable to attend to other matters. Emoshi's face instantly darkened, obviously stung in his weak spot. The demon woman Lingxi behind him was even more furious, her demonic energy surging. Second, I did not give him a chance to argue, my voice suddenly raised with a painful accusation. My teacher, Liang's imperial advisor Qiu Shan, in order to restart the barrier and seal the demon scourge, did not hesitate to sacrifice his own thousands of years of cultivation and soul and perish together with the demon lord. And with him sacrificed countless loyal cultivators and soldiers of the Liang. Their heroic souls are now resting under this hall of heroes. I pointed to the huge hall of heroes behind me, covered with names, each name representing a heavy sacrifice. And just now, I and the soldiers were mourning and paying tribute to the heroes. This lover of the Lord, without asking right or wrong, clamored to kill me, to avenge the demon lord. May I ask the Lord, what qualifications does she have to roar here? What qualifications does she have to ask me to kneel? When her demon lord father led the army to slaughter the human realm, did he ever think of kneeling down and begging for forgiveness? My voice was like an unsheathed sword, piercing straight to the pair of gods and demons. Mo Shi's face was livid, his divine power fluctuating, obviously extremely angry. Lingxi even screamed, "Shut up! My father is the supreme of the demon realm. You lowly mortals, killing him is what you deserve." Silence! I scolded sternly. The emperor's majesty was fully displayed, briefly suppressing the demon woman's shriek. My gaze shot towards Mo Shi like lightning. Third Lord, if it wasn't for Qianlong's action just now, this demon woman would have approached me. She came with murderous intent. Is it impudent and deserving death for my guards to protect me? And you, your celestial highness, without asking the reason, merely because she is the woman beside your pillow, you use divine power to gravely injure my loyal and courageous guard. Is this the way of the war god of the heavenly realm? Is this what you call protecting the three realms? Protecting, is it just the demoness in your arms? Presumptuous. My repeated questioning infuriated Mo Shi, and his divine power, like a substantial mountain range, came crashing down, attempting to crush me completely. Xiaoyan, this god's actions are not for you, a mere mortal, to question. Though the father of Ling, she was at fault. His crime did not warrant death. You, for your own peace of mind, committed such an exterminating act, and even allowed your subordinate to injure others. This god will say it one last time, kneel. Kowtow out to Ling Shi and admit you're wrong. Otherwise, don't blame this god for acting on behalf of heaven. The terrifying divine power made my bones creak, and the funeral procession behind me was thrown into disarray, making it difficult to breathe. But I still straightened my spine as if the weight of 10,000 June was non-existent. I looked at him, at his handsome divine face twisted with anger and favoritism, at his eyes that could only accommodate a demoness, and turned a blind eye to the suffering of billions of people. When the mortal world needed him, he was indulging in love. When the demoness committed evil, he shouted, acting on behalf of heaven, treating mortal lives like grass, viewing mortal sacrifices as nothing, simply using his own preferences to force the human emperor to kneel. The demon lord's slaughter of humans was though at fault. The national teacher's self-sacrificing sealing of the demons was an exterminating act. The demoness' attempt to kill me was justified, and my guards' counterattack was allowing subordinates to injure others. I slowly, extremely slowly, shook my head. There was no fear on my face, only a cold, all-seeing sorrow and determination. Act on behalf of heaven? Heh. I let out a very light sneer, which was exceptionally clear in the muffled thunder and divine power. Celestial Highness Mo Shi, your heavenly Tao, I don't understand, nor do I want to understand. I only know that my people were earned with the lives of the national teacher of Qiu Shan and the thousands of heroic souls beneath this monument. I only know that my teacher taught me that there is gold under the knees, and one should only kneel to heaven and earth, parents, and only respect the loyal martyrs who sacrifice themselves for the country. As for you, my gaze was like cold ice, piercing him and the demoness in his arms, and the lover in your arms who wants revenge for the demon lord. I, Xiaoyan, the son of heaven of great Liang, stand here today. Want me to kneel and apologize to a Demonis? Unless. I paused, each word like a nail being hammered in, decisive and resolute. Heaven collapses and earth sinks. Mountains and rivers are forever silent. Otherwise, don't even think about it. Thunder rumbled. Lightning illuminated the solemn black armor, the silent giant monument, and also illuminated Mo Shi's face, twisted by the disobedience of a mortal. Very well, Xiao Yin, for defying a deity, today this god will make you vanish into ashes. As he spoke, lightning flashed in his hand, preparing to strike me. The others wanted to save me, but they were completely unable to move under the pressure. Stop! Just then, a solemn voice came from afar. Hearing this familiar voice, the war god looked up. I also looked in the direction of the voice. He was still dressed in white, as if untouched by dust. His name was Tian Yin, a messenger from the heavenly palace to the mortal world. He often took advantage of the benefits from the human world. Seeing the arriving god, the war god was still angry, but he also knew that this was the emperor of heaven's messenger. With a cold snort, he withdrew the lightning. Tian Yin flew to the war god's side, whispered a few words, and then looked down at us condescendingly, saying, "Mortal Xiao Yin, for defying a celestial highness, but considering that this is your first offense, today's matter will not be pursued any further. It ends here. On what basis?" Before the war god could speak, I roared angrily. The war god abandoned his post without leave, disregarded the life and death of the human world, and even protected the demon clan's holy maiden who harmed my great Liang's loyal and good people. How can this matter be allowed to rest? On what basis? As soon as I finished speaking, the war god sneered. Then lightning flashed in his hand and struck the monument to the heroic souls. There was a loud bang, and the huge stone tablet shattered in response. The rubble fell on the ground, creating huge pits. Just because I am a god, and you are just a lowly mortal. He looked down at us from above, as if looking an insignificant ant. As he spoke, he embraced Ling Shi and flew toward the sky. Seeing that I still seemed very angry, Tian Yin said, "Don't be resentful. Do you know how many hardships the war god and the demon clan's holy maiden went through together, and how many misunderstandings arose before they came together? What does that have to do with us? Why should we pay for their love?" I said angrily. Seeing that I was immune to persuasion, Tian Yin waved his sleeve and snorted coldly. "You are on your own." After saying that, he flicked his sleeves and left. It wasn't until the distant glow disappeared that the pressure on everyone slowly dissipated. I was supported by Wang Ji and said, "Continue." That night, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep, and finally made a decision. Early the next morning, I called Wang Ji into the imperial study, took out the imperial edict that I had already written, and ordered him to announce it to the world. The gods of heaven, for their own selfish desires, disregard the safety of the people of the human world. From today onwards, abolish all divine sacrifices within the territory of Great Liang. Destroy all temples, shrines, and statues dedicated to the gods. Confiscate and burn all divine scriptures and magical artifacts. Anyone who privately hides or worships them will be regarded as a traitor and executed without pardon. This imperial edict will serve as the first national policy of my Great Liang, and will not be changed even after my death. Actually, the punishments afterward were superfluous. The people had long been fed up with the gods' current practices and spontaneously smashed temples and destroyed their golden bodies. It's no wonder the people were so enthusiastic. When they offered sacrifices to the gods before, they would rather eat less food themselves than offer less incense to the temple. But what they received in return was such an outcome. It couldn't help but chill the hearts of the people. After all, it wasn't the first or second time that the gods had disregarded the welfare of the world to indulge in love. Thus, this large-scale abandonment of faith continued for several months. Inside the Golden Palace, it was solemn and dignified. Civil and military officials were lined up in 2 rows, discussing affairs of state. Xiao Yin sat on the dragon throne, with a trace of fatigue that could not be dispelled between his eyebrows, but his eyes were sharper and clearer than ever before. The implementation of the edict to abolish the gods for several months had caused the heavenly court to be furious and send down several tentative small disasters, but they were all overcome by the united efforts of the great Liang's army and people. Not only did the people not waver, but their cohesion became unprecedentedly high due to the court's resolve and reverence for the heroic martyrs. The Ministry of Works reports that the progress of water conservancy repairs in various places is going smoothly. Even if there are droughts and floods again, it can. The Minister of Revenue's words were not finished. A deafening roar suddenly came from outside the palace. Immediately afterward, the palace door was violently kicked open by a burst of brute force. Two figures were thrown in like broken sacks, crashing heavily on the golden brick floor, spewing blood from their mouths. They were none other than the commanders of the Golden Guard, who were on duty in front of the palace. The strong black armor on their bodies was shattered inch by inch, obviously bearing unimaginable heavy blows. Who is it? Protect the Emperor! Protect the Emperor! The palace was in chaos in an instant. The civil officials were horrified, while the military officials reacted extremely quickly, drawing their swords and quickly protecting Xiao Yin in the center. The tips of their swords were all pointed in the direction of the palace door, and the atmosphere was extremely tense. Amidst the smoke and dust, a dazzling white light slowly entered the palace. It was still that spotless white robe, still that face that seemed compassionate, but was actually indifferent, the heavenly palace messenger, Tian Yin. I had already guessed that he would come. The power of the gods came from the faith of the human world. If the human world no longer offered sacrifices, the divine race would inevitably be affected. They would definitely send someone to come and question us. And Tian Yin was the messenger from the divine race to the human world. Tian Yin exuded a suffocating pressure, as if the air in the entire palace had solidified. The military generals who drew their swords to protect the emperor felt that the weapons in their hands were as heavy as 1,000 June. Their arms trembled uncontrollably, and large beads of sweat rolled down from their foreheads. The civil officials were almost unable to breathe under the pressure, their faces pale. Mortal Xiao Yin, Tian Yin's voice was like the friction of cold metal, echoing in the deathly, silent palace. Every word struck the hearts of the people. Do you ants know how grave your sins are? I slowly stood up behind layers of guards. I pushed away an old general blocking in front of me, and walked step by step to the edge of the imperial steps, facing the celestial deity who exuded a terrifying aura. There was no panic on his face, only a settled, cold determination. Sins? My voice was clear and steady, and it seemed exceptionally powerful under the oppression of divine power. May I ask, Honorable Envoy Tian Yin, what sin is there for my great Liang's people to commemorate the heroic martyrs who sacrificed themselves for the country? What sin is there to smash the statues and temples of those gods who only know how to demand, do not protect, and even protect enemies? What sin is there that my human world only seeks justice and peace? Presumptuous! The divine light in Tian Yin's eyes soared, and an even stronger pressure surged toward me like a tsunami. I let out a muffled groan, my body swayed, and a trace of blood seeped from the corner of my mouth, but I still gritted my teeth and kept my spine straight, without taking half a step back. Justice? Peace. Tian Yin seemed to have heard a great joke, his tone full of sarcasm and impatience. You mortals have the short-sightedness of frogs at the bottom of a well. The actions of the gods have their own profound meanings. How can you recklessly speculate and wantonly slander them? The marriage of the war, God Mo Shi and the holy maiden Ling, she is ordained by heaven, and the causes and effect involved are not something you can understand. You, for your own personal grievances, cut off the incense of the three realms, causing the source of divine power to dry up and the heavenly court to be shaken. This is a grave crime that can overturn the three realms. He took a step forward, his divine power even stronger, and his gaze nailed me like a knife. Xiaoyan, this envoy is here today to give you, and also to give this foolish human world, one last chance. Immediately issue an edict to restore all divine temples and sacrifices, reshape the golden bodies of the gods, repent as a nation, and rekindle the incense. Otherwise, 2 years ago, the water god had a feud with a mortal woman, causing a great flood that destroyed her village. Several surrounding villages were submerged, and thousands of innocent villagers were killed. Tian Yin was stunned, not expecting that the mortal in front of him would mention this matter. I ignored his doubts and continued speaking. 1 year ago, the Earth God, in order to save his beloved immortal woman, actually took out his Earth core, causing a severe earthquake that lasted for months in the human world, with countless deaths and injuries. Half a year ago, the human world suffered a severe drought, with red earth in thousands of miles, and starvation everywhere. I personally set up an altar, burned incense, and prayed for sweet rain. The rain god finally appeared and sent down a brief light rain, and the people just showed joy, thinking that heaven would not abandon people. But what was the result? My voice suddenly rose, with extreme irony and grief. Only a moment. Just a moment. It was called away by a delicate call from an immortal woman from who knows where, abandoning the thousands of wailing creatures without regard and fluttering away, leaving behind a ground full of despair and bones. Tianyin, Xiaoyan called him by name, with no more respect, his voice like a thunderbolt, echoing loudly in the palace. Is this the unfathomable actions of the gods you speak of? Is this the divine marriage of the immortal couple you call ordained by heaven? Is this what you want us to kneel to, worship, and pray to the guardian of the three realms, the Buddhas and gods of the heavens? Tian Yin was speechless for a moment, but still explained, "Don't the gods have emotions?" I heard the words and shook my head. This I cannot decide, but I turned and said, "You are the gods, to enjoy human offerings, but because of love, without regard to their duties. Then why should we continue to believe in them?" Tian Yin, upon hearing this, became enraged and embarrassed. A radiant glow slowly appeared in his hand, as if he were about to attack. But I wasn't afraid. I continued to stare at him. What? Does the High God want to kill me? I have already issued an imperial edict. Even if you kill me, this edict will never be revoked. Killing me will only make the people of Great Liang even more furious. Moreover, what you have done over the years has long lost the hearts of the people. Unless you slaughter all of humanity, but do you dare? You, Tian Yin was shocked by my words. Of course they didn't dare. If all of humanity were killed, without the support of human faith, the gods would lose all their power and even face the risk of being reduced to ashes. You just wait. Seeing that he couldn't threaten me, Tian Yin left with a snort and a flick of his sleeve. After Tian Yin left, we all slowly breathed a sigh of relief. Then I said to Prime Minister Jiang Ming, "Beloved Minister Jiang, we must speed up that matter. Your subject obeys." Prime Minister Jiang Ming, with his full head of white hair, bowed and walked out of the hall. After Tian Yin left, humanity faced the gods' frantic revenge. Reporting to your majesty, the Bashu region has experienced an earthquake of a magnitude unseen in a century, causing countless deaths and injuries. Reporting to your majesty, the great river has burst its banks, submerging hundreds of villages. Reporting to your majesty, a thunderbolt struck near the capital, killing and injuring several people. In just a few months, memorials reporting disasters all over the country poured into the palace, causing this country, which had just experienced war, to suffer greatly. But even so, the people of Xia did not yield. Even when Tian Yin appeared in various places to negotiate terms, he was refused. Such disasters only aroused more resentment from the people. And I was not unprepared. The day after I announced the imperial edict, I summoned the ministers to discuss the possible repercussions. I had prepared various countermeasures early on, Although these were not enough to fight against the gods, they could alleviate the suffering of the people. However, we were powerless against the divine punishment inflicted by the god of war, which strengthened my determination to do that thing. Time passed quickly, and we persevered through such disasters for a year. Perhaps because his divine power was being consumed too quickly, when I was attending the morning court, suddenly the guard Shunlong walked in. "Reporting to your majesty, the gods have come to negotiate again. They are waiting outside the main hall." I narrowed my eyes slightly. "Oh, is that so?" I knew they would come again. After all, seeing that humanity was unwilling to compromise no matter what, they must be anxious. "Let's go, all of you follow me," to welcome the gods. With that, I stood up from the dragon throne and led the ministers towards the outside of the hall. As soon as I left the hall, I saw that the guards outside the hall were surrounding two people. No, to be precise, two gods. I was a little surprised. It seemed that more than just Tian Yin had come this time. Next to him was an old acquaintance. It was the god of war, Mo Shi. At this moment, he was looking at the guards surrounding them with an angry expression. Although the guards also showed fear on their faces, they still endured their fear and surrounded the two gods. When Tian Yin saw me coming, he quickly greeted me. "Emperor Xiao Yin, it has been a long time. How have you been?" I ignored Tian Yin's words and looked him up and down. It seemed that the lack of faith had a great impact on the gods. In just 1 year, the divine power in Tian Yin's body was less than half of what it used to be. But then I looked at Mo Shi and couldn't help but be stunned. Although both were experiencing a loss of faith, Tian Yin's divine power was almost gone, but Mo Shi's body was still surging with divine light. It seemed that those great gods still had certain means to prevent their divine power from dissipating. Mo Shi was a little displeased with my scrutiny. I also saw the displeasure in his eyes and said with a sneer, "I wonder what brings the two high gods here." Seeing that I was asking so directly, Tian Yin cleared his throat and tried to maintain his dignity as a god. "I have come by order of the Heavenly Emperor to negotiate peace with humanity." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, tell me, how do we negotiate?" Tian Yin cleared his throat again. "The human Emperor Xiao Yin, in order to vent his personal anger, has wantonly bewitched humanity to destroy the faith of the gods, causing unrest in the three realms." Hearing this, I frowned slightly. The officials who came with me also looked at the two gods with displeasure. Tian Yin seemed not to have noticed our displeasure and continued to speak eloquently. But in consideration that the god of war, Mo Shi, was at fault first, he is now ordered to apologize to him. The Heavenly Emperor is generous. As long as you continue to restore the faith of humanity, we will no longer pursue his fault. After hearing this, I sneered and did not refute them. I just watched them perform quietly. I saw Tian Yin looking at Mo Shi, who had a look of resentment on his face and coughed lightly. "Ahem. Oomph." Mo Shi snorted irritably, then looked at me and reluctantly apologized. "I'm sorry, I was wrong. I shouldn't have abandoned my post. That's it. I didn't buy it." After doing so many outrageous things, they were just going to gloss over it so lightly? How could it be so cheap? It seems that the high god's apology is not very sincere. At this time, Tian Yin and Mo Shi both frowned slightly. Mo Shi then said, "I have already apologized. What else do you want me to do?" I snorted coldly. "At least you have to hand over that hurtful demoness before we can talk, right?" Seeing that I actually wanted him to hand over his precious Ling Shi, Mo Shi was furious. "Xiao, don't push your luck. Don't think that this will make me unable to do anything to you." Of course, I knew that he couldn't hand over Ling Shi. I just wanted to anger him. The conflict between the human race and the gods was no longer a private feud between me and Mo Shi. Negotiation was impossible. I spread my hands. "Whatever. It's up to you if you don't want to hand her over." Since you, the emperor, don't want to talk, then forget it." Mo Shi didn't take any further action, but Tian Yin spoke. "God of war, do it. Since you are looking for death, then I will grant you your wish." As soon as he finished speaking, thunder light suddenly appeared in Mo Shi's hand, and then he instantly arrived in front of my face. Everyone panicked when they saw this scene. But I didn't panic, not even blinking an eye. Boom! Just as M.O. Shi's attack landed on me, a strong golden light erupted from my body. Then it actually blocked M.O. Shi's attack and sent him flying out. M.O. Shi flew out several meters and landed steadily in the air. He looked at me in disbelief, then suddenly seemed to understand something and laughed out loud. Ha ha, Xiaoyan, I thought you were really the kind of person who wasn't afraid of death. So you were so afraid of death, knowing that doing this kind of thing that goes against the gods will bring divine wrath. You actually prepared a set of defensive measures in advance. How ridiculous. I did not refute, but looked at him with a smile. At this time, Tian Yin also flew to M.O. Shi's side, probably because he was afraid that I would take the opportunity to attack him. He was not as strong as M.O. Shi now, and his divine power was already very low. After he flew to M.O. Shi's side, he tried to incite my ministers. Everyone, look at the emperor you are loyal to. He made you do things that are hated by both humans and gods. But he secretly prepared defensive measures because he was afraid of death. He doesn't care about your lives at all. As expected in the mouth of heaven, his ability to sow discord was indeed impressive. M.O. Shi seemed to have grasped the key point as well, and said, Xiaoyan, I can't break your defense for the time being, but your ministers are not like this. Either you immediately cancel the god ban, or I will kill all your ministers. Hearing this, I was stunned. This M.O., she was ruthless. If I agreed, they would get what they wanted, and if I didn't agree, they could take the opportunity to sow discord. Just as I was about to speak, roars suddenly erupted from below. Your Majesty, you must not agree to them. Your subjects would rather be crushed to pieces than suffer this humiliation of being driven apart. It was that old general with his hair and beard standing on end. He glared at the gods in the sky, his voice hoarse, but every word was sonorous. Immediately afterwards, more voices converged into a wave. That's right. We are not afraid of death. They just want to see us, the emperor and his subjects, estranged. Your Majesty, don't worry. Kill us if you want, but want us to worship these false gods again? Don't even think about it. The faces of the two above were not very good-looking when they saw the excited crowd. You are simply unreasonable. M.O. Shi was ashamed and angry. Then don't blame me for being rude. As he said that, lightning gathered in his hands again. And at this moment, I slowly raised my hand, signaling everyone to quiet down. Then, coldly looking at the two in the air, I said, How do you know that what you just saw was my defensive measure? What? Hearing my words, the two frowned even deeper. They didn't understand what I meant by that. I waved my hand and said, Prime Minister, are you ready? Let him come out. Your subject obeys. Everyone was looking at me with confusion, seemingly not understanding what I meant. But M.O., she seemed to sense something and looked towards the side hall with a grave expression. And in the next instant, a figure slowly walked out of the side hall. This person was now surging with radiant light, emitting a divine power that was even purer and more powerful than M.O. Shi's. Then, almost instantly, he appeared beside me. At this moment, everyone, including the two gods in the sky, gasped, because this person was none other than the great Liang's imperial preceptor, who had previously sealed the demon with his own body, Qiu Shan. Your subject, Qiu Shan, greets your Majesty. Before I could make any move, Tian Yin reacted and pointed at me with an angry face, saying, Xiaoyan, you dare to create gods privately. Hearing this, I slowly raised my head and said coldly, So what? The day after I issued the decree to abolish the gods, I found Prime Minister Jiang Ming. Before, when Qiu Shan was searching for forbidden arts, he gave me another book. It was a book called the Deification Decree, which recorded the process of transformation from human to god. In other words, the gods in the sky now were once human beings and were eventually deified, enjoying the worship of mankind. However, they have long forgotten these facts. They consider themselves superior, enjoying the incense of the human world but no longer protecting it. This book recorded that as long as the faith of the human world is collected for the dead heroes, the power of faith can be used to deify. I found Prime Minister Jiang Ming at the time and ordered him to publicize Qiu Shan's deeds in schools, history books, and street storytelling. We spared no effort to spread his heroic deeds. Soon, Qiu Shan's deeds spread to the minds of everyone in Great Liang. I didn't believe that the gods didn't know about this, but I understood them. They were arrogant and dismissive of the affairs of the human world. So this went smoothly. I didn't dare gamble on the subsequent steps. I didn't know if the gods also had records of related deification processes. So I ordered Jiang Ming to secretly build temples, using the temples destroyed by humans in their own homes, collecting the faith of the world in various ways. Finally, he successfully condensed Qiu Shan's soul. But after this step, I stalled. Because in ancient times, when humans deified gods, they used some other mysterious power, and we couldn't replicate that power. If that power wasn't used, the power of faith could not be transformed into divine power. Finally, I had a bold plan. I had always kept the treasure for collecting power on my body. Just now, I deliberately angered Mo, Shi, just to use his attack to collect this power. This was a gamble. I was betting on whether the gods would attack me, whether that treasure had the ability to collect power, and whether the gods still had the power to transform faith into divine power after thousands of years. The results showed that I won the bet. God, we created him. You, how dare you? And Mo, she looked at Qiu Shan, wondering what he was thinking. Of course I knew what he was thinking. Qiu Shan's aura of divine power was very similar to his, but it was purer and more powerful. Because Qiu Shan was the god of war that we created, belonging to the human world. As for why we chose to create the god of war first, it was because we could deal with disasters. But the real difference in strength with the gods was the most fatal. We urgently needed a power that would allow us to confront the gods. The god of war in charge of war was the best choice. Mo, she looked at Qiu Shan and snorted coldly. A man-made god of war? Let me shatter your illusion. As he said that, he raised his hand, and a thick bolt of lightning descended from the sky, blasting towards Qiu Shan and me. Qiu Shan wasn't flustered, and neither were the others, because they believed that this god of war of their own could protect them from harm. Isn't that the meaning of the god of war's existence? Qiu Shan raised his hand. An array of divine light flew out, forming a shield made of divine light, protecting the people below. Boom! A loud noise came, and the lightning struck the protective shield, without causing any damage. How is that possible? Seeing this scene, Mo, she looked at Qiu Shan in disbelief. Then, Qiu Shan waved his hand, and the divine light dissipated. He walked towards Mo, she step by step. With each step he took, his body slowly rose. Countless tiny golden lights rose from the shattered monument of heroes, from the imperial city, and from the distant lands of Great Liang. They gathered into a dazzling heavenly staircase, carrying his footsteps. What he emitted was no longer the cold, dazzling, and destructive silver-white lightning of Mo, Shi. It was a warm, heavy, as if bearing countless prayers and sacrifices of golden light. That light vaguely had the shouts of soldiers charging, the whisper of a mother's prayers, the rustling of children writing. This is the faith of the human world, holding up this new god of the human world, slowly approaching the old god who was once high above. With each step, Mo Shi's face became more and more ugly, until the moment he rose to the same height as Mo Shi. He finally couldn't hold on, and a mouthful of golden blood spewed out of his mouth. Lord Mo Shi, divine light is illusory. The source is shaken. Qiu Shan's voice was calm, but with the power to penetrate eternity, resounding through the heavens and the earth. Mo Shi, you squander your faith, betray your duties, and indulge in personal love. The position of the god of war, the responsibility of guarding, you have long torn apart and abandoned with your own hands. What you protect is just a bubble of your own selfish desires. He slowly raised his hand, pointing to the dignified human emperor and subjects below, pointing to the broken but still standing ruins of the Monument of Heroes. From today on, the god of war of the human world should be cast by heroes and wielded for the sake of the common people. Do you false gods have any objections? Tian Yin looked terrified and supported Mo Shi. Mo Shi pushed Tian Yin away with an irritated expression and looked at Qiu Shan with a face full of unwillingness. Seeing this, I slowly opened my mouth. Can you hand it over now? Hearing this, Mo Shi turned around and glared at me angrily. Mortal, you dare to create gods privately. As he said that, he pointed at everyone. You will pay the price for this. Saying that, he turned around and left with Tian Yin without looking back. After the two gods left, there was a deafening cheer from below. At this moment, I also smiled lightly, looking at Qiu Shan, who was still standing in the void. This conflict marked our first victory against the gods, and also proved that the gods were no longer invincible. Qiu Shan also slowly fell to the ground at this time, falling into the human world. After that, I no longer hid my actions and ordered the various parts of Great Liang to start rebuilding temples. But this time what we were offering were no longer the gods high above, but every mortal who had come from the human world and made outstanding contributions to Great Liang. Li Bing, who had great merit in water control, was named the water god. Chun Mingsheng, who cultivated high-yield crops, was named the god of agriculture. Zhang Heng, who created the seismograph, was named the god of earth. We used their glorious deeds to move the world, and let the world become their most loyal believers. Finally, after the power of faith was collected enough, Qiu Shan provided the power to transform the power of faith into divine power, and finally deified. During this period, the war between humans and the gods officially started after the god of war left. Because the gods we deified were stronger than the gods, even if they used disasters to counterattack, we had certain countermeasures. However, in the war with them, we didn't make a high-profile advance all the way, and at first we fell into a disadvantage. But all of this was within my expectations. After all, the gods had existed for thousands of years, and their foundation was extraordinarily deep. Even if their divine power dissipated, it was still not comparable to that of mortals. And the gods we newly deified were too few, and it was normal to fall into a disadvantage in a short time. However, as the number of gods we newly deified increased, we and the gods entered a stalemate of equal strength. But even though it was said to be evenly matched, discerning people could see that time was on our side. The gods would only become weaker and weaker as their faith collapsed, and our gods would only become more and more. Finally, after the war lasted for more than a year, the gods could no longer hold on. They once again sent Tian Yin to negotiate with me. But this time he didn't bring the god of war, nor did he come alone. Instead, he brought several heavenly soldiers and tied up several gods. I looked at the few gods kneeling on the ground bound. Of course I recognized them. Rain god Yin Pei, water god Qiu Zhe, and earth god Kuan Shun. These three had all brought disasters to the mortal realm, and were also the few derelict gods I had questioned Tian Yin about in the main hall. I naturally knew their purpose in doing this, which was nothing more than using these insignificant gods to earn our forgiveness. After all, any discerning person could see that the destruction of the God Clan was only a matter of time. If they wanted the God Clan to continue, the only way was to obtain the forgiveness of me, the human emperor. Of course, I knew these things, but I still pretended to be puzzled and asked, I wonder, Envoy, what is the meaning of this? Tian Yan's face was extremely ugly after hearing this. I thought he must have heard the mockery in my tone. Your Majesty jests. This humble god would not dare to have your Majesty call me Envoy. I was stunned to hear this. It seemed that time had worn away their arrogance. Or perhaps the current situation no longer allowed them to be arrogant. Seeing that I didn't respond, he pointed at the few kneeling on the ground and continued. These sinful gods have committed mistakes and caused great losses to the mortal realm. His Majesty, the Heavenly Emperor, was furious upon learning this, and especially sent these sinful gods to plead guilty to your majesty. These few are entrusted to your majesty for your disposal. Speaking, he bowed to me. We hope your majesty will cease the erroneous act of creating gods and continue to believe in us, in order to stop the conflict between the two races and enjoy lasting peace. We swear to your majesty that we will never forget our duties for all eternity. I didn't listen to his nonsense, but looked at the three gods kneeling on the ground with angry expressions. It seemed that these three had been forced to come, and should have been placed under a silencing spell or something similar. I shook my head and said, "Isn't there one missing?" The eloquent Tian Yin paused at my words. Of course one was missing, one with the deepest grudge against us, war god Mo, Shi. But I guess they would definitely not hand him over. After all, the war god was their bottom card. Without handing over the war god, they still had the confidence to go back on their word. If they handed over the war god, if I broke the agreement midway, they would have no means of resistance. I smiled and looked at the stunned Tian Yin. It seems the envoy's peace talks are not sincere. Hearing my words, Tian Yin immediately showed a flustered expression. Your Majesty, the war god has also realized his mistakes. Please be magnanimous and forgive him. I picked at my ear and said casually, then at least hand over that demon saintess. This, Tian Yin looked troubled. The war god's wife? Oh no, that woman is already married to the war god. She has already become a god. Hearing these words, I suddenly burst into laughter. Ha! The laughter made Tian Yin shudder. I wiped my eyes and said, I'm violating the natural order by using human faith to create gods, but you can arbitrarily bestow godhood according to your own preferences? Saying this, I patted the guard Chunlong beside me. Tell me, isn't it funny? Chunlong was also a man of his word and laughed loudly. Yes, it's too funny. Tian Yan's face became increasingly ugly with our laughter, but he didn't know how to refute me for a moment. After laughing enough, I looked at the silent Tian Yin. Do you think there is any need for us to continue talking with you? Hearing this, Tian Yin frowned and said, Emperor, are you really going to be so absolute? Yes. He still refused to give up and continue to persuade. How can you be sure that they will do better than us in the future? We were also originally. He stopped before he could finish. Of course, I knew what they would say, which was nothing more than that they were also from the mortal realm before they were bestowed godhood, but now they have become like this. But the dignity of being a God Clan member prevented him from saying such things. I chuckled. There's no need for the envoy to worry. We have our own plans. Seeing the negotiations had broken down, Tian Yin flicked his sleeves. Several heavenly soldiers were about to untie the ropes of the bound figures. Seeing this, I gave Chunlong a look. Chunlong immediately understood, drew his sword, and blocked the heavenly soldiers' hands. Seeing Chunlong stop them, Tian Yin asked unhappily, What are you doing? I chuckled. Did the envoy forget that we are still at war? You have sent the prisoners to us. What reason do I have to let you take them back? You. Tian Yin was angered by my words and choked for a long time without knowing what to say. He didn't dare to attack me, not to mention that he didn't know if Qiu Shan was nearby. Even with his current divine power, whether he could kill me was a problem. Tian Yin could only flick his sleeves and fly away. I watched Tian Yin disappear. The smile on my face instantly faded, leaving only cold decisiveness. My gaze swept across the three former high-ranking gods who were now prisoners. Rain god Yin Pei's face was ashen, his body trembling slightly. Water god Xiao Zhe tried to straighten his spine, maintaining the last of his dignity, but the fear in his eyes betrayed him. Earth god Kun Shun had a look of resentment, staring at me intently. Chunlong. My voice was not loud, but it clearly spread throughout the square. Take them to the Meridian Gate. Understood. Chunlong clasped his fists and took the order, his voice as loud as a bell. He led a team of fierce Imperial Guards forward. They rudely dragged the three old gods up and pushed them towards the outside of the palace. Those heavenly soldiers were already scared out of their wits. How dare they stop them, and fled the scene in a hurry. The news spread like wildfire, instantly spreading throughout the entire capital. His Majesty is going to execute the gods at the Meridian Gate. This shocking news ignited the long silent capital. The people, who had been suppressed for too long and had experienced too much suffering, surged from all directions towards the Meridian Gate like a tide. Flames of complex emotions burned in their eyes. There was the Taltan hatred for the old gods in action and the disasters they had brought, the fanatical anticipation for the new order and the new gods, and even a kind of excitement and catharsis of witnessing history and burying the old era with their own hands. Outside the Meridian Gate, the place was packed with people, with heads swaying. The dark crowd was silent, and only the heavy breathing and suppressed sobs intertwined, forming a heavy and chilling atmosphere. On the high platform, I sat on the dragon throne, with Qiu Shan standing beside me, his body shrouded in a gentle and majestic golden divine light, forming a stark contrast with the three old gods who were kneeling down in a state of disarray. Xiaoyan, you rebellious and tyrannical tyrant, if you dare to kill the gods today, you will be punished by heaven tomorrow. The heavenly court will not let you go. All the gods and Buddhas will surely turn your mortal realm into scorched earth. You will never be reincarnated. His curse was like a poisonous snake, trying to burrow into the hearts of everyone. Water god Xiao Zhe also roared, "You foolish mortals! You are courting your own destruction by following him. Without the protection of our gods, you will sooner or later be swallowed by natural disasters and demonic misfortunes." Earth god Kuan Shen only let out a beast-like roar, his resentful eyes fixed on me. The people were enraged by this insane curse, and a roar like a tsunami erupted from the crowd. "Kill them! Avenge our dead relatives! These false gods are not worthy to be gods. His Majesty is wise. The national teacher is mighty." The angry shouts almost overturned the Meridian Gate. I slowly raised my hand, and the seething crowd instantly quieted down with countless eyes focused on me. I stood up, my voice steady and clear, spreading to every corner. "We are here today not to vent personal anger, not to show off power. These three gods, with divine responsibilities, enjoy the offerings of incense from the mortal realm, but do not think about protecting the common people. Instead, because of personal feelings and desires, they brought floods, droughts, and cracked the earth, causing countless subjects of my great Liang to have their homes destroyed, their flesh and blood separated, and their souls returned to the 9 springs. Their sins are Hao Tan, unspeakable." I pointed to Qiu Shan, my voice suddenly rising, with an unquestionable majesty and determination. National teacher Qiu Shan is a hero of my mortal realm, remembered by all people, and gathered the power of the common people's wishes in order to become a new god. His authority comes from the mortal realm, belongs to the mortal realm, and is only for protection. Today, this mortal war god will carry out punishment on behalf of heaven. In the name of the mortal realm's will, execute these derelict, faithless, and chaotic false gods. As a warning to others, Qiu Shan, I ordered in a deep voice, "Your subject is here." Qiu Shan stepped out. The golden light around him suddenly surged. The vast divine power was no longer oppressive, but carried a solemn sense of sacredness and the will to protect, enveloping the entire audience. Without superfluous words, the light in his hand condensed, turning into a simple and heavy golden long sword. It was not a magical weapon, but a pure, boiling mortal faith and will to protect condensed. He held up the sword of faith, his eyes like lightning, sweeping across the faces of the three old gods distorted by fear, and finally fixed in the void, his voice like a bronze bell, resounding through the sky, announcing the end of the old era. By the order of the mortal emperor and bearing the will of the people. As the words fell, the sword moved. There was no earth-shattering roar, only 3 golden sword lights that seemed to purify all filth, as brilliant as the sun. accurately and decisively across the necks of the three old gods. Aga! Three shrill screams that did not sound like human voices came to an abrupt end. There were no cruel scenes of blood splashing. The three severed bodies, like shattered glass, instantly disintegrated into countless fine spots of light, interspersed with wisps of dark aura representing their decayed divine power. However, as soon as this dark aura appeared, it was quickly purified, devoured, and dissipated by the pure power of mortal faith surrounding the Meridian Gate, like snow melting under the scorching sun. Only the pure, non-attribute source of divine power reigned silently. Silently and silently, it merged into the land in front of the Meridian Gate, into the bodies of every surrounding person, and into this mortal realm that had been through thick and thin. The land that had been ravaged by divine punishment seemed to have a glimmer of life at this moment. There was dead silence between heaven and earth. Everyone held their breath, staring blankly at the place where the spots of light disappeared. Then, like a volcano that had accumulated for thousands of years, it finally erupted. Long live! Long live His Majesty! Long live the national teacher! Deafening, heartfelt cheers soared into the sky. Countless people burst into tears, kneeling on the ground and kowtowing devoutly towards the high platform. That was not blind awe of the gods, but a heartfelt support and gratitude to the emperor and the new gods who had personally ended the suffering and created the future. The power of faith had never been so turbulent, converging into a golden torrent, pouring into Qiu Shan's body, and also pouring into the spirits of the unordained but remembered heroes. Qiu Shan sheathed his sword. The golden light converged, turned around, and reported to me, "Your Majesty, the execution is complete." I looked at him, at the seething crowd below the stage, and nodded slowly. This cut severed not only the lives of three derelict gods, but also completely severed the last trace of illusion and fear that the mortal realm had of the old god system. It declared to the three realms. The mortal realm already possessed the power and determination to judge the gods and reshape the order. The era of the new gods, with the blood and godhood of the old gods, had officially begun. The war between humans and gods continued. Tian Yin came several times afterwards to seek peace, but I refused them all. But there seemed to be a barrier between the god clan and the human realm, and we couldn't attack them in a short time. But they could only huddle within the barrier. Another year passed, making it the second year since the severance of faith. The power of the gods was dwindling. Even a joint effort by several old gods was no match for the new gods. However, for the past month, the celestial realm had been completely silent. But I didn't let my guard down because of this. I didn't believe that those old gods would sit idly by and wait for their end. To that end, I made many preparations. But clearly, my preparations were insufficient. Another year passed, making it the third year since the old god's faith had been severed. The old god's power was like a dying candle in the wind. Even if several gods joined forces, they would be easily defeated by Qiu Shan or any of the other powerful new gods. For the past month, the celestial realm had been completely silent, with no more probing or disasters being sent down. But I didn't feel relieved in the slightest. The old gods would never sit still and await their demise. Like trapped beasts, the more desperate they became, the more violently they would retaliate. To that end, I strengthened the defenses of each state and county, ordered all the new gods to be on high alert, and had Qiu Shan constantly monitor the human-demon barrier. That was the hidden worry that troubled me the most. If the old gods were driven to desperation and colluded with the demons, it would be the greatest disaster for the human world. However, my preparations ultimately underestimated the madness and depth of betrayal of the gods in despair. That day, the Imperial study was brightly lit. I was discussing with Qiu Shan and several important officials how to break the ancient laws of the gate to the celestial realm. Qiu Shan frowned, his fingertip tracing across the huge sand table, simulating the flow of divine power and the nodes of the laws. Your Majesty, this method is extremely mysterious. A forced breakthrough will likely require a huge price, and it may not even be successful in one attempt. Qiu Shan's voice was grave. I was about to speak when Qiu Shan suddenly froze. He abruptly raised his head, his gaze piercing through the thick walls of the palace, directly towards the distant southwest. His eyes were filled with unprecedented shock and a hint of unbelievable coldness. Master, my heart sank. The barrier. Qiu Shan's voice was terribly low, as if each word carried the weight of 10,000 June. The human-demon barrier has been torn apart. A huge rift. What? I was so shocked that I stood up from the dragon throne. The teacup on the table was knocked to the ground, making a piercing crash. A cold chill instantly ran from the soles of my feet to the top of my head. The human-demon barrier, that was the barrier that Qiu Shan had rebuilt at the cost of his life, concentrating the will of humanity. It was the cornerstone that isolated the demons and protected the peace of the human world. The demons themselves could never shake it in the slightest. Humans couldn't possibly destroy their own defenses. The answer was obvious. The gods. Qiu Shan and I spoke almost in unison, our voices filled with icy killing intent and overwhelming anger. In order to survive, they dared to open the gates of the demon realm and invite wolves into the house. This was utter betrayal, the ultimate blasphemy against the living beings of the three realms. Master, take me there, now. My voice was decisive, without the slightest hesitation. Yes. Qiu Shan waved his sleeve, and a soft and majestic golden light instantly enveloped me and several key officials. Space twisted. The scenery before our eyes changed rapidly, and the next moment, bone-chilling demonic energy mixed with bloody astral winds swept over us. We were already at the human-demon border. The sight before us was hair-raising. The pale golden barrier that spanned the heavens and the earth, once so indestructible, now had a huge rift spanning hundreds of miles, as if it had been bitten by a giant beast. Pitch-black demonic energy poured out from the rift like a flood bursting its banks, rapidly polluting and eroding the surrounding space. The earth groaned in pain under the corrosion of the demonic energy. Vegetation withered and rocks crumbled. At the same time, the new gods who sensed the barrier's breach in Qiu Shan's aura, water god Li Bing, agriculture god Chen Mingsheng, land god Zhang Heng, etc., also transformed into streams of light of various colors, all carrying the will of protection, and arrived through the air, instantly gathering behind Qiu Shan and me. Looking at the huge rift, their faces were all filled with gravity and anger. Just as the demonic energy raged and people were panicked, deep within the rift, at the core where the demonic energy was the most concentrated, two figures slowly emerged. The one on the left was the familiar war god, Mo Shi. He was still dressed in spotless white, but his once arrogant and indifferent face now bore a morbid fanaticism and a twisted loyalty that bordered on sacrifice. The divine light around him was dim and mottled, faintly revealing strands of black energy, indicating that in order to maintain his power or achieve some goal, he had not hesitated to let his divine power be tainted by demonic energy. And standing beside him, even faintly taking the lead, was that equally familiar figure, Ling Shi. But she was no longer the charming and pitiful demon saintess who once leaned against the war god's chest. She wore a heavy demon lord robe with a ferocious style and flowing dark purple demonic patterns, and wore a demon horn crown symbolizing supreme power. There was no trace of weakness on her pale face, only coldness, cruelty, and a contempt that came from possessing absolute power. Her aura was 100 times stronger than it had been in the past. The pure and terrifying demonic might was like a tidal wave, standing in stark contrast to Mo Shi's mottled aura. She had actually ascended to the position of demon lord. Xiaoyan, Qiu Shan, and you ignorant new gods. Mo, Shi's voice rang out first, filled with resentment and a near-manic triumph. He pointed at us, as if delivering a sentence. Do you see? Your end has come. Ling Shi has taken control of the demon realm and become the new demon lord. And my god race will abandon its past grievances and form an alliance with the demon race. Today is the day that you ants who defy the heavens and blaspheme divine power will be destroyed. With the armies of two realms combined, we will turn your human world into dust and make you unable to be reincarnated forever. Ha ha! His maniacal laughter echoed in the demonic, energy-filled rift, carrying a sense of impending doom. The new gods looked grave and stood ready. My heart was also turbulent. A god-demon alliance was indeed the worst-case scenario. But my gaze couldn't help but fall on Ling Shi. Since she appeared, she had been silent. Her eyes, once full of hatred and triumph, were now like bottomless cold pools, coldly watching the manic Mo Shi, the corners of her mouth seeming to curl into an extremely subtle, chilling arc. Just when Mo Shi's mad laughter reached its peak, when he opened his arms as if to embrace the great alliance he had facilitated, an unexpected change occurred. Ling Shi, who was standing beside him, her right hand that had been hanging down in the sleeve of her demon lord robe, reached out as fast as a ghost. That hand was white and slender, but now it was surrounded by pitch-black demonic essence condensed to the extreme, enough to pierce through the bodies of gods and demons. A dull thud that made one's teeth ache, the sound of flesh and bones being forcibly pierced, drowned out Mo Shi's wild laughter. Time seemed to freeze at this moment. The manic laughter on Mo Shi's face instantly froze, replaced by extreme astonishment, confusion, and then a surge of indescribable pain and disbelief. He slowly lowered his head and saw that hand belonging to Ling Shi, stained with golden divine blood, piercing through his chest from the position of his heart. That hand was holding a violently beating divine core, emitting a dim golden light. Ling, see? Mo Shi turned his eyeballs with difficulty, looking at the woman he had given everything to protect, betraying everyone for her sake. A broken, hoarse sound came from his throat, full of incomprehension and despair that went deep into his bones. A clear and cruel smile finally appeared on Ling Shi's face. There was no warmth in that smile, only naked ambition and a desire to devour everything. Her voice was cold and clear, like a poisoned ice pick, piercing into the ears of every living being present. Foolish old gods, your value is only to help me open this gate, and... She suddenly tightened her fingers, and the divine core belonging to the war god let out a mournful cry in her palm. Strands of pure divine power were forcibly extracted and integrated into her own demonic essence, causing her aura to skyrocket again, to become the first nourishment on my path to the supreme. No! From the direction of the celestial realm, there was a faint, heartbreaking, desperate roar from the heavenly emperor, but everything was beyond redemption. The light in Mo Shi's eyes completely went out, and his body slumped like a broken doll, thrown away by Ling Shi at will, falling into the churning abyss of demonic energy, instantly swallowed without a trace. A war god who once dominated the three realms ended his absurd life in such an ironic and humble way, becoming the first stepping stone for the new demon lord's ambition. Ling Shi, perhaps now she should be called the new demon lord, slowly withdrew her hand, licking the golden divine blood remaining on her fingertips. Her eyes, like the most ferocious predator, locked onto us, locked onto the entire human world, and her voice resounded throughout the heavens and the earth. The old gods have paid the price for their foolishness. Now it's your turn. Warriors of the demon race, use blood and fire to wash away the past humiliation. This rich human world will be our race's new hunting ground. Give me kill. As she gave the order, countless scarlet demon eyes lit up deep within the rift, accompanied by deafening roars, gushing out like a black tide. The real catastrophe had arrived. Our new gods were powerful, but the demon race had absorbed the power left behind by the old gods, and their strength had also greatly increased. The two sides fought fiercely, and it was difficult to tell who would win. This protracted war lasted for a long time. The turning point was in the Imperial City. We used failure to lure Ling Shi into the Imperial City, and finally Qiushan used that forbidden technique again to kill her. However, because Qiushan had collected enough faith, he was not killed by the backlash of the forbidden technique this time. Due to the death of the Demon Lord and the gradual dissipation of the power absorbed from the gods before, the demon race finally couldn't hold on. In the end, they retreated to the barrier and sent envoys to negotiate peace. I agreed, not because I was soft-hearted, but because the human world had experienced too many wars in recent years. They needed rest, and so did we. Finally, the gods worked together to seal the barrier between the two races again and signed a treaty that the two races would never go to war again. Thus, this long war between the human race, the gods, and the demon race came to an end. The human world was revitalized again with the help of the new gods, ushering in a new chapter. I would often look at the hero's monument that had been repaired and ask myself if I had done the right thing. But every time I would answer, this was the best choice. 100 years later, I looked at the busy imperial physicians and the weeping crown prince, Shao hung on my sickbed. I patted his head. Watch over this great Liang for me. After I finished speaking, my hands slowly fell. I closed my eyes forever. Extra. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself in a magnificent palace. I frowned. Didn't I die? Where is this? I looked down at my hands. The skin was delicate and smooth. Where was the appearance of an old man? Just as I was wondering, a familiar voice suddenly came from afar. Your Majesty, you've finally arrived. I followed the sound and saw a young man dressed in riding clothes. I recognized him. He was one of the new gods I had once appointed, in charge of transmitting information between the celestial and mortal realms. I frowned. Zhu Ming. Zhu Ming, upon hearing this, bowed to me. Indeed, it is your subject. Where is this place? Why am I here? Having finally encountered someone I knew, of course, I had to ask. Zhu Ming smiled and said, This is the Celestial Palace, Your Majesty. Celestial Palace? I murmured, and immediately a conjecture sprang to mind. Am I become a god? Zhu Ming nodded upon hearing this. Later, through his explanation, I finally understood the reason. The former Prime Minister of Great Liang, Jiang Ming, secretly collected a large amount of faith energy for me, using the same method previously used to consecrate the god of war, Qiushan. However, a person becoming a god must be free from the constraints of a mortal body, which meant they had to be physically dead. But they couldn't possibly kill me back then. They could only wait for me to die of old age naturally before consecrating me as a god. And by that time, Jiang Ming would have been dead for decades. Listening to this, I helplessly shook my head. That old Jiang actually used my own methods against me. I looked at Zhu Ming's expectant face. All right, since I'm already here, what god am I? Zhu Ming then put on a cunning expression and then knelt on one knee. Your subject Zhu Ming respectfully welcomes the Heavenly Emperor's ascension. After that, I took over the position of Heavenly Emperor and governed all the gods of the celestial realm. After ascending the throne, I issued an edict. From then on, a consecration ceremony would be held every 100 years, consecrating a batch of new gods. This way, old gods and new gods would compete with each other, and those new gods with dreams and responsibilities would inject fresh blood into the divine system. This would maximize the prevention of the old gods from dominating. Another 100 years passed. I looked at the mortal woman kneeling in the hall and announced in an incomparably majestic voice, Mortal woman Emon Yang has repeatedly rescued drowning fishermen in the mortal realm, now bestowed with a divine position, title, Sea God,